In the tranquil town of Bushy, England, life flowed gently like ripples on a lake. Louise Hunt, beloved daughter, devoted sister, was the heart of a close-knit family, where days were filled with laughter, shared meals, and the warmth of home. But at a wedding of her boyfriend's family, Louise faced a moment of suffocating humiliation in front of dozens of eyes. A simmering rage crept into her heart, and she could never have imagined that her decision afterward would unwittingly open the door to a blood-soaked tragedy. Just 4 days later, the stillness of the Hunt household was torn apart by the cold whistle of arrows, the gasping breaths of fear, and a night that claimed the lives of 3 innocent souls. Bushy, a prosperous town about 16 miles east of London, was renowned for its charming blend of urban and rural life. Once considered a peaceful haven where horrific crimes were unthinkable, Bushy became the stage for Louise's terrifying story. Louise Hunt, 25, embodied the finest values nurtured by the town of Bushy. Born and raised in a happy family, she was cherished by the community, not only for her cheerful, open nature, but also for her dedication to her work and family. The Hunt family home sat on a quiet street where Louise lived with her parents, Carol and John, and her sister, Hannah. It was more than a house, it was a true sanctuary, where laughter echoed and familial bonds were nurtured daily. Louise was especially close to her mother, Carol, and her sister, Hannah, strong, intelligent women who stood by her side in every decision. With an entrepreneurial spirit and a love for animals, Louise had founded Groom and Glow, a pet grooming service operated from the garden behind their home. This business not only provided her with a steady income, but also showcased her love and dedication to the pets in the area. However, amid Louise's bright life, one element would lead her down a tragic path: her relationship with Kyle Clifford. Kyle, 26, from Enfield in North London, carried dark shadows that neither Louise nor her family could have foreseen. Kyle grew up in a family with a dark history of violent crime. The third child, he lived in the shadow of his older brother, Bradley, who was serving a prison sentence for murder. This family environment profoundly shaped Kyle's mindset and behavior, creating a man with serious psychological issues that few could detect from his outward appearance. In 2019, Kyle joined the Army, perhaps hoping to find a positive direction for his life. However, his military career lasted just over 2 years and ended under suspicious circumstances, with 286 days of leave for unspecified health reasons. After leaving the Army, Kyle transitioned to working in security, but failed to maintain that role for long. His sexist remarks and inappropriate behavior led to his dismissal, serving as a warning sign of his problematic character and mindset. These were also harbingers of a tragedy that would shake not only Bushy, but the entire nation of England. The love story between Kyle and Louise began like many modern romances through a dating app. In December 2022, they met on Bumble, one of the most popular platforms for young people seeking love. Louise, with her radiant appearance and open personality, caught Kyle's attention from their first conversations. Kyle knew how to present himself. He came across as a confident man with a stable job in security, unafraid to share stories of his military past. To Louise, this painted a picture of a mature, responsible man. Their early dates went smoothly, with Kyle showing genuine interest in Louise's life and work, even expressing enthusiasm for her pet grooming business. Their relationship quickly turned serious. Within a few months, Louise introduced Kyle to the Hunt family, known for their warmth and hospitality. The Hunts welcomed Kyle as a new member. Carol, Louise's mother, always prepared thoughtful meals whenever Kyle visited. John Hunt, despite his busy schedule as a sports commentator, made time to talk with Kyle about various topics. Hannah, Louise's sister, was initially friendly toward her sister's boyfriend. However, after months of observation, the Hunt family began to notice troubling signs about Kyle. According to close family friends, no one truly liked him. Though they respected Louise's choice, they described Kyle as arrogant, often making strange and inappropriate comments. He had a habit of boasting about his family, particularly his imprisoned brother Bradley, as if his crimes were something to be proud of. Other red flags emerged. Kyle frequently made racist and sexist remarks that made the Hunt family uncomfortable. He showed disrespect toward them. Despite their kindness, in particular, Kyle displayed a general lack of respect for women, something the Hunt family, a household of strong, independent women, could not tolerate. Unbeknownst to Louise, Kyle was living a double life. During their 18-month relationship, which was supposed to be serious and exclusive, Kyle was simultaneously involved with 2 other women. He skillfully concealed this truth, using sweet words and thoughtful gestures to maintain Louise's trust. But his deception could not last forever. The turning point came in late June 2024 when Kyle invited Louise to attend a family member's wedding in Northern England. Always supportive and trusting of Kyle, Louise agreed to join this significant event, seeing it as a step forward in their relationship. However, the wedding turned into a nightmare for Louise. In a moment of recklessness, perhaps fueled by alcohol or a desire to show off in front of his relatives, Kyle bragged about his relationships with other women. He spoke of his other dates as if they were normal, even describing the parallel relationships he was maintaining in detail. Louise felt as though she had been slapped in the face in front of strangers. She was humiliated not only by his betrayal, but by the way Kyle publicly shamed her in front of his family. It was not just an emotional betrayal, but a severe affront to her dignity. On the way home from the wedding, Louise made the decision to end the relationship. She could not and would not forgive Kyle's deceit and humiliation. In a message to Kyle, she expressed her decision clearly and firmly. "I'm sorry, Kyle, but I can't continue. I feel our relationship has been completely shattered by what happened. The way you treated me was disrespectful and shameful. I need space to protect my mental health and dignity. It's over." Kyle's reaction went through several stages, each revealing his troubled character. At first, he responded with anger, accusing Louise of trying to make him the villain in the story. Unable to accept responsibility for his actions, he instead tried to blame her. When his anger proved ineffective, Kyle shifted to feigned indifference. He acted as though the breakup didn't affect him, claiming he could easily find someone else. But this attitude was short-lived. Finally, Kyle resorted to begging and pleading. He bombarded Louise with messages, claiming he couldn't live without her, that she was the love of his life, and that he saw her as his future wife. Kyle promised to change, vowing never to repeat his mistakes, and begged Louise for one last chance. But Louise stood firm in her decision. She understood that Kyle's actions were not mere mistakes, but a reflection of his true character. She documented the specific reasons for the breakup in her phone, including Kyle's frequent visits to his brother Bradley in prison, without ever condemning or acknowledging his serious crimes. Kyle even defended Bradley and spoke of his family's violent behavior as if it were normal. Louise also noted Kyle's recurring racist comments, his disrespect toward her family, and especially his boasting about his family's history of violence as if it were something to be proud of. Together, these painted a complete picture of a man Louise could not and should not continue to love. What Louise didn't know was that her reasonable and necessary decision to end the relationship had triggered a dangerous chain of thoughts in Kyle's mind. Just 4 days after receiving Louise's final breakup message, Kyle began actions that suggested he was planning something horrific. Kyle started researching crossbows online. He spent hours studying different types, their usage, and particularly their lethal capabilities. Eventually, he purchased a Horizon Cornet MXT405 crossbow, a powerful weapon along with 6 bolts. In addition, he bought a large knife, duct tape, and gasoline. These purchases were not random or for sporting purposes. They were carefully chosen tools for a murder plan Kyle had been harboring. Louise's rejection not only wounded his pride, but also activated the latent violent tendencies he had absorbed from his family and environment. This phase marked a transition from a toxic relationship to a deliberate criminal plan. Kyle had gone from a rejected boyfriend to a potential murderer, and Louise and her family were entirely unaware of the storm approaching. July 9, 2024 will forever be remembered as the darkest day in Bushy's history. At 1:00 p.m., Kyle Clifford left his home in Enfield with a meticulously prepared plan to kill. In his car, a crossbow was carefully hidden under a white cloth, along with a large knife stowed in a backpack. Before heading to the Hunt residence, Kyle researched horse racing schedules to confirm that John Hunt would not be home at the time. He knew John, a well-known sports commentator, would be busy with work and absent that afternoon. When he arrived at the familiar house in Bushy, Kyle knocked on the door and told Carol Hunt he wanted to return Louise's belongings. Carol, with her kind and trusting nature, opened the door for Kyle, a man she had known for the past 18 months. At around 2:45 p.m., Kyle brutally attacked Carol Hunt with the knife. Carol, a gentle woman who had never harmed anyone, became the first victim of his blind rage. While the attack took place, Louise was in the pet grooming area in the backyard, completely unaware of the tragedy unfolding with her mother. After killing Carol, Kyle returned to his car to retrieve the crossbow and waited for Louise. At around 4:00 p.m., Louise entered the house and discovered the horrific scene. Before she could react, Kyle overpowered her with duct tape, binding her wrists and ankles. For the next 3 hours, Kyle held Louise in the house, accessing her Instagram and messages. At around 6:00 p.m., Kyle used Louise's phone to send a message to John Hunt, asking when he would be home. The message was sent as if from Louise, indicating Kyle's attempt to deceive. The tragedy reached its climax at 7:00 p.m. when Hannah Hunt returned home. Just before Hannah entered the house, Kyle shot and killed Louise with the crossbow. When Hannah walked in and saw the horrifying scene, she screamed, "What are you doing?" before Kyle shot her dead. Despite being gravely wounded, Hannah mustered enough strength to send a message to her boyfriend. Alex called the police immediately. "Kyle is here. Police. He's tying us up." 2 minutes later, at 6:58 p.m., she called 999 and said, "My sister's ex-boyfriend is in the house and shot us." Kyle Clifford fled the scene at 6:55 p.m., just 3 minutes before the police arrived. He left behind 3 dead bodies and a blood-stained home, turning a happy family into a tragedy that would shake the nation. Hannah Hunt's desperate 999 call at 6:58 p.m. on July 9th triggered one of the largest manhunts in British police history. Just 12 minutes after Hannah's tearful and blood-soaked call, the first responders arrived at the Bushey home. What they found would haunt them for life. The scene inside the Hunt residence was truly horrific. Carol Hunt was found in the living room, dead from severe knife wounds. Louise and Hannah lay in pools of blood, both with crossbow bolts piercing their bodies. The rescue team immediately attempted CPR on Hannah, who still showed faint signs of life. Despite their best efforts, the medics could not save her. Hannah died at the scene, leaving 3 bodies and a pressing question: who did this? The answer came quickly. Thanks to Hannah's bravery in her final moments, the message she sent to Alex and her 999 call clearly identified the suspect, Kyle Clifford, Louise's ex-boyfriend. This information was immediately relayed to investigative units, and a massive manhunt was launched across London and surrounding areas. Hertfordshire Police, responsible for the Bushey area, collaborated with the Metropolitan Police to orchestrate an unprecedented manhunt. Hundreds of officers were mobilized, including armed special forces, counterterrorism units, and helicopter teams. The search focused on 2 main areas, Bushey and its surroundings, where the crime occurred, in North London, particularly Enfield, where Kyle lived. On the night of July 9th, police raided Kyle's home in Enfield. However, they found only an empty house with no signs of Kyle's return. Investigators collected critical evidence from his home, including documents related to the crossbow purchase, internet search history about weapons, and personal notes revealing his unstable mental state. Police also raided the former address of Bradley Clifford, Kyle's brother, in Enfield, hoping Kyle might be hiding there. This search yielded no results, as Bradley, serving a murder sentence, could not provide a hideout. Meanwhile, police issued a public warning, urging people not to approach Kyle Clifford if spotted. They emphasized that he might still be carrying the crossbow, a weapon capable of precise, deadly shots from a distance. Kyle's image was widely distributed through media, social networks, and electronic billboards nationwide. The investigation at the crime scene continued through the night and into the next day. Forensic experts collected evidence from every corner of the Hunt home. They found Kyle's DNA on multiple surfaces, fingerprints on Louise's phone, and evidence that Kyle had used her phone to message John Hunt. Security cameras from neighboring homes also captured Kyle arriving and leaving the area. Particularly significant was data from the Hunt family's smart doorbell system, which recorded the conversation between Kyle and Carol when he arrived. The recording showed Kyle deceiving Carol about his reason for visiting, claiming he was returning Louise's belongings. His calm voice in the recording starkly contrasted with the brutality he would unleash minutes later. Investigators also analyzed Kyle's phone data, discovering that he had researched John Hunt's schedule, specifically the horse racing events he would be commentating. This confirmed that Kyle had planned the attack for a time when John would not be home, possibly to avoid confronting an adult male who could fight back. In Kyle's electronic devices, police found disturbing notes. Some revealed his obsession with Louise post-breakup, including plans to win her back and violent thoughts toward the Hunt family. Notably, some notes indicated that Kyle viewed rejection as a personal insult and had decided to punish Louise and her family. The manhunt for Kyle Clifford dominated British media. Thousands of public tips flooded police lines, reporting alleged sightings of the suspect across the country. However, most were mistaken or misinformation. On the morning of July 10th, nearly 24 hours after the massacre, a critical call came in. A local in Enfield reported hearing screams from Lavender Hill Cemetery, near Kyle's home. The cemetery, a large and secluded area, was an ideal hiding spot for a fugitive. Armed police teams immediately surrounded the cemetery. Police helicopters circled overhead, while special forces meticulously searched the area. After hours of searching, they found Kyle Clifford unconscious beside a gravestone, with a crossbow bolt piercing his body. Kyle had attempted suicide by shooting himself with the crossbow, but failed to end his life. He was rushed to the hospital in critical condition and required 10 weeks of treatment. The injury left him paralyzed from the chest down, meaning he would spend the rest of his life in a wheelchair. With Kyle Clifford's capture, the manhunt concluded, but the investigation and evidence collection continued. The police needed to build a comprehensive case to ensure justice for Carol, Louise, and Hannah Hunt. After 10 weeks of hospital treatment, Kyle Clifford was finally healthy enough to face the justice system. His physical condition had changed drastically, from a former soldier to a man confined to a wheelchair due to paralysis from the chest down. However, his condition did nothing to lessen the horrific crimes he had committed. In preparation for the trial, prosecutors built a robust case based on a mountain of evidence. Physical evidence included the crossbow, bolts, knife, duct tape, and DNA at the scene. Digital evidence comprised phone data, internet search history, messages, and security system recordings. Faced with the overwhelming evidence, Kyle made a surprising decision. He pleaded guilty to 3 counts of murder: Carol Hunt, Louise Hunt, and Hannah Hunt. He also admitted to charges related to possessing offensive weapons, including the crossbow and knife. However, Kyle refused to plead guilty to a more severe charge: the rape of Louise Hunt. This charge stemmed from forensic evidence collected at the scene, indicating that Louise had been raped during the 3 hours she was held captive by Kyle. The trial officially began in early March 2025 at the Central Criminal Court, Old Bailey, in London. It was one of the most high-profile trials of the year, drawing attention from across the UK and beyond. Kyle Clifford refused to attend his own trial. This decision sparked public outrage, with many viewing it as a final act of defiance and disrespect toward the victims and their family. The trial proceeded in his absence. Forensic medical experts testified about the DNA evidence collected at the scene. They presented detailed findings on biological samples, clearly showing that Louise had been raped. The defense argued that the DNA could have come from consensual sex 2 weeks earlier, when Kyle and Louise were still dating. They claimed that DNA could remain in the body for an extended period, making it impossible to prove rape occurred on July 9th. However, forensic experts thoroughly debunked this argument. They explained that, based on the condition and characteristics of the DNA samples, there was no possibility they could have persisted from 16 days prior. The experts stated with scientific certainty that the DNA could only have been deposited 1 to 2 days before collection. The prosecution dismantled Kyle's claims with irrefutable evidence. They emphasized that the attack was not impulsive, but a meticulously planned crime. Kyle had purchased the crossbow, bolts, knife, and duct tape for a specific purpose. He had researched John Hunt's schedule to ensure only women were in the house. Other evidence at the scene clearly showed that Louise had been tightly bound and brutally assaulted. The presence of severe injuries and signs of violence on her body refuted Kyle's claim of consent. The prosecution stressed that the attack was a carefully orchestrated crime. The rape was just one part of a series of actions meant to control, humiliate, and destroy Louise. The prosecutor argued that Kyle's actions were not just murder, but an attempt to utterly dominate and annihilate his victim. He sought to commit an absolute crime by raping, killing, and then leaving as if nothing had happened. After hearing all evidence and arguments from both sides, the jury retired to deliberate. The deliberation was remarkably swift. After just 45 minutes, the jury returned to the courtroom with their verdict. Kyle Clifford was guilty of raping Louise Hunt. The rapid verdict reflected the overwhelming strength of the evidence and the clarity of the crime. The jury needed little time to conclude that Kyle had committed all the crimes he was accused of. With all charges proven, Kyle Clifford was sentenced to 3 life sentences, without parole for the murders, and 30 years for the other charges. In a victim impact statement, John Hunt expressed his pain and outrage. "Remember one thing, no matter what pain awaits you, on the day you die, you will not be free. The screams from hell, I can hear them now." The tragic case of Carol, Hannah, and Louise Hunt left a deep scar not only in the hearts of their family, but also in the Bushey community and across England. 3 innocent women became victims of a murderer driven by jealousy, control, and hatred. John Hunt, the sole surviving husband and father, now faces a life without his wife's laughter, his eldest daughter, Hannah's support, or Louise's radiant smile. The once warm home in Bushey has become a place of painful memories. The Bushey community, once known as a peaceful haven, confronted the reality that violence can strike anywhere. Families in the area have bolstered security measures, and many have attended courses on recognizing warning signs in toxic relationships. Kyle Clifford, the murderer who stole 3 precious lives, will spend the rest of his days in prison, with 3 life sentences without parole and 30 years for other charges. He will never be free again. His paralysis from the chest down ensures that every day in prison will remind him of the consequences of his brutal actions. This story serves as a powerful warning about the dangers of domestic violence and the importance of recognizing warning signs. Louise made the right decision to end a toxic relationship, but she could not have anticipated Kyle's level of danger. The Hunt family and the Bushey community continue their journey of healing. The beautiful memories of Carol, Hannah, and Louise will be cherished forever, and their lives will be remembered not for how they died, but for how they lived with love, dedication, and joy. Justice has been served, but nothing can bring back the 3 lives lost. Their story will continue to inspire efforts to prevent violence and protect women from men like Kyle Clifford.